We are joined by our sports director, Jeff Hathhorn. Good morning to you, Jeff.
Morning, guys.
Jeff, as I understand it, Omar Khan speaks today. What are we expecting to hear out of the Steelers general manager?
He is going to detail all of their plans.
Going to lay it out.
Awesome.
All will be bared today.
He's going to explain the trade for Patrick Mahomes and just lay that all right out there. I expect them to say that they're looking at quarterback. They're looking at all their options. I expect them to say that, they need to focus on defensive line and running back and wide receiver, find a cornerback, need to find the best player available. We'll steal that from Kevin. Listen, understandably, he's not going to give away his secrets. He doesn't want other teams knowing exactly what they're thinking. But I think he'll be vague, and I think he'll be serious in the fact that there are some areas that they need to improve to get to the level they want to be at.
Jeff, do you think that it makes sense for them to enter the negotiations with Matthew Stafford, trying to get Matthew Stafford? Does that make sense to you? Would you do that? Does it make sense to the Steelers?
Well, I would not do it. Does it make sense to look at all of your options? Yes. Even if it's just to drive the price up maybe for one of your competitors. I think it always makes sense to enter in those situations. But I look at Stafford like I look at some of the other guys like Russell Wilson. You're not fixing the problem. You're Band-Aiding the problem. You're maybe bridging something, but you're not fixing it. And when you look at the set, listen, they have money to spend. But when you look at what Stafford wants to be paid reportedly and what you'd be giving up in draft capital, I don't know if that's where the Steelers are at. I mean, I understand it. He had a good year. He played well in that playoff game in Philadelphia. He doesn't turn it over a ton, but he's 37. I mean, is that where the Steelers are at?
So you agree with us. I mean, that's how we view it. Still a really good player, a lot of money, would cost draft equity to be able to get this guy. So that's how we view it. And anecdotally, it sounds to me like that's how a lot of the listeners feel. Do they feel that way, though? Would they look at that as a Band-Aid, or do they think we're a Stafford away from really making some noise in all of this?
I mean, I don't know a year where the Steelers didn't believe that they could win the Super Bowl that season. And to that point, you bring in a Russell Wilson because you feel like – because, listen, you can make the argument that this offseason, you get that quarter, you get Matt Stafford. Then in the draft, you get a wide receiver, a defensive lineman, a corner that all contribute. You add depth. That offensive line all comes together. You add a running back in free agency or wherever. You add maybe another receiver in free agency, and you feel like, hey, look at us. We're in this mix now. I don't necessarily see it that way, but I think the Steelers, and we've talked about this, should look at what they did at the beginning of the 2000s. 2001, they're an AFC title team. They're in the AFC championship team. Yet they were unsure about Cordell. By 2003, they still had a team that could win a championship, but they ran out there with Tommy Maddox because they didn't want to rush or didn't want to go out and get Bernie Kosar or somebody who was like 38 to be their bridge quarterback. They wanted to build their team around, so when they got the quarterback, they were ready to go. I think that's where they need to go, but I do think the reason you hear about some of these things is I believe they believe that with some of the players on defense and a young line and Pickens and some of the other things that they're a quarterback and a couple other players away, which may change in an offseason.
Jeff, do you really think that they could draft a running back in the first round again?
No. And I saw, I think it was NFL Draft Network or someone that had a mock of Ashton Genty to the Steelers.
McShay did it.
Yep.
Yeah, I just don't see that. I don't. I mean, and maybe it's wishful thinking that you think you learn. I don't see Genty as like Saquon or Bijan even. But you can find value that's nearly Najee later in the draft or maybe even as a free agent. I mean, unless it's somebody that's just head over heels and you saw it in college where they just dominated. I can't imagine ever taking a running back. I know what those two running backs did last year, but I'll bank that Saquon and Derrick Henry are outliers as to where the game is right now.
Jeff, I asked Mark Cavalli this question yesterday, interested in your opinion on this. One position that they'll spend more money on in free agency than the others. And I'm talking about on one player. What would be the big ticket item, do you think?
You'd like to think wide receiver. I'm going to say it's going to be corner. Because corners are expensive. They need a second corner. I'm going to say that's where they're not going to go draft a corner, that they're going to go find one in free agency. So I'm going to go corner. I mean, it could be wide receiver because they need multiple. So if you add in position room, but I'm going to say corner.
Jeff, are the Penguins in full rebuild mode right now, or are they in half rebuild mode right now?
No, I think they're in full. Mm-hmm. They're in full with still 3 guys that were key to their cup runs. I think you'll see a couple more moves before the deadline if there are players that other teams are interested in. When you don't bring back a Jake Gensel, you're kind of signaling right there. And then when you're doing what you're doing with Jari, when you make a couple of other moves you made, it's just listen. In hockey, it's hard. I mean, again, for bargaining reasons, you don't want to say, "Listen, we're tearing it all down," and also for gate reasons. For the dependence that they have on fans coming, you don't want to that maybe that you feel that spooks some fans. But yeah, they're in rebuild, and I think now some tough decisions, like will Carlson change his mind and look to go somewhere else, even though they probably have to pick up some of that salary. I mean, what do Malkin and Letang want to do? I mean, Chris still has 3 more years on his deal. And I mean, Gino only has 1. Maybe that sways him that he wants to go out of Penguin. But man, I know it's just two games out of the 4 nations, but how brutal was that?
Oh, awful,
real brutal, and to 2 rivals nonetheless. And then you've got the Flyers a couple of times this week, and I do worry if they approached Letang, approached Malkin, and by they I mean Dubas, about waiving their new move clauses, if that might shake Crosby a little bit. I mean, we know the saying, misery loves company. It's one thing for Sid to say he wants to be here for the remainder of his career when he's got his buds, and okay, we're going to stink, but at least I love you guys. Well, now if you're the lone man, I think that's dangerous territory, Jeff.
I would think that Sid's pretty self-aware. I would think that. And when he signed that extension this offseason, that he kind of understood where they were at. I mean, maybe in his maybe there's an optimism there that, hey, we're going to beat the odds because I believe in these guys. But I think he probably knew what the situation was. Not that it's any harm. I mean, you can imagine you come from that 4 nations. You're playing with Nathan McKinnon on your line. And then you come back, and even though, Hellebuck maybe wasn't the greatest championship game, you think about having that in net to some of the struggles that they've seen. I mean, Ned's been decent, but, man, he was horrible on Saturday. And then, Yoel he's just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I do think people need to be patient with him, because he's a young goaltender, and this is not exactly a good defensive team. But you're right, Jeff. There was a yawning cage missed opportunity by Kevin Hayes this weekend, and it made me laugh when juxtaposed with Crosby behind the back pass to Nathan McKinnon tape to tape, but he just puts it right to the back of the net. Like, I realize it's going to be stark, but it kind of hit me like a sack of bricks. Jeff, sorry, go ahead.
No, and I was going to say one thing with Yoel is it normally takes goalies time. So I'm not going to give up on this guy. I mean, he's going to go through some things. There's going to be a lot said about him. I mean, we're going to see how tough he is. This is going to be an interesting stretch for him.
Jeff, rumor has it that you will be hosting the Fan 15th anniversary party tomorrow. Are you wearing a tux, and are you excited about this?
I am not wearing a tux. I'll probably go more casual, not horribly casual, but more casual. But I am asking for money for nice intros, because if not, I mean, the intros for you guys might be pretty severe.
What if we both paid you to be even more difficult with Pony?
Hey, I'm open to all comers.
Let's go.
There we go.
Get the money together.
That'll be an off-the-air conversation.
Yes, it will.
We'll have Callus foot the bill on that one. Thank you, Jeff.
I'm excited about this, guys.
Oh, me too, man.
Good.
This is going to be awesome.
It's going to be great. Jeff, thank you for the time. We will see you tomorrow, and we'll talk to you on the air on Thursday. Let's go.
All right. See you, boys.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff Hathhorn, our sports director.